Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host, Bill DeFilippo, joined today by my co-host, Nick Pollock. Nick, what's going on?
I am doing well. Very happy to be back. It's been a while.
Very.
I have a
Been a
2.5-year-old now.
while.
I don't remember how old he was last time I potted, but he's 2.5 now. It's fun.
Oh, I was in the middle of standing it up, so I wasn't sure if you were talking about your son or Matt there. Also, speaking of people on this edition of the podcast, Matt Filipovitz. Matt, what's going on?
Bill, two things I'm offended by to start things off. That you went to Nick before me, and the bug bite I have directly on my kneecap. So those are two things that have me fired up on this lovely Thursday at time of recording.
You know what? As long it doesn't matter how many podcasts you do in a row without me, Bill's natural instinct is still going to be to go to me first.
Can I tell you why I did that? It was because I knew Nick was going to say, "Yeah, I'm good," and Matt was then going to riff a little bit. So I'm glad that my idea there, my reasoning there worked out really well. And it's actually a really good precursor to this podcast, because this podcast is all about coming up with reasonings for things. Because, my friends, it's time for a tradition unlike any other. It is the Roar Lions Roar season preview over under podcast. Matt, take it away.
Thank you, Bill. It is the final podcast of the off season, fellas. That is the week when this comes out. It is the Monday before game week for the Penn State Nittany Lions, and it is time for a tradition unlike any other: the annual Roar Lions Roar Penn State over under selection show. This has been a tradition since we have gone podcast only, and I could be wrong. I do not remember, but I think we used to write this as an article back when we were a written medium. That is entirely possible, but that website no longer exists, so who is to say? For first-time listeners of this podcast, I, every single year, along with friend of the show, Mike, who was not very much help this year because he has a newborn. Shout out to Mike. So therefore, Len, shout out to Len, helping me out with this a little bit as well. So we have three heads come together to set over-under lines for both Penn State individual players and for team-specific statistics for this upcoming fall. I believe that covers all the bases of this game. Bill or Nick, is there anything I missed that you think the audience should know about this fairly straightforward podcast we do every year?
Yes.
What is that?
More of a query, actually.
Okay.
Have you or anybody else gone back to review our success rates on these?
I probably could. Nick, I got to be honest with you. I'm in a challenge right now with one of my really good friends to have as low screen time as possible. So I got to wait until that challenge is over, because then I will try to find that out. Because I'm pretty sure last year we all did horrible with how optimistic we were about this time. But I could probably go back and pull those numbers together.
I feel like the ones last year were very obvious, though, and I feel like Bill and I both nailed all of them.
Let me go look. I should have these in here somewhere.
No, we're not looking to the past. We can't. We're
looking to this.
Look forward.
They were last year. They were 29.5 passing touchdowns for Drew Allar. I am happy to put an asterisk on that one. 14.5 sacks allowed by Penn State. They allowed 19. 0.5 lineman touchdowns for Penn State. 0. The worst thing Matt has ever come up with.
All right.
4.5 pass catchers to have at least 40 catches.
Obviously, Nick. Obviously, Bill. Nick Singleton and Katron are obviously going to be a big part of our obviously passing game, as we know.
39.5 sacks by Penn State's defense. Penn State had 32. 15.5 turnovers for Penn State's defense. I don't have the number of what they ended up with.
You're giving away some of my bits, Bill.
1.5 new names in the top 2 of Penn State rushing history. I believe it only ended up being 1, but Singleton was able to take number 1 for total touchdowns. Over under 799 yards for Penn State's top pass catcher. Over under 13.5 points per game allowed by Penn State's defense. So some of these were very optimistic. I will say this year, they are, I don't think they were too terribly difficult, Nick. I don't think there is one that is like clearly ridiculous.
That's good. That means we're getting better.
there is no repeat of the multiple pass catcher disaster.
All right, listen, I don't want to hear it. For listeners at home, Bill and Nick do get these ahead of time, so they have seen it. They have gotten an opportunity to build a case surrounding their choice to go over or under, and I will also share my thoughts. Fellas, let's wrap up the housekeeping. Bill, just because you come first alphabetically, we're going to start with you for each of these, then we'll go to Nick, and then I'll round it out with my thoughts as well as my prediction for each of these. And with that, I think a tradition unlike any other should begin. And with all of these, I will also share at some point throughout each individual one my reasoning behind why I set this line.
I was going to say, as a caveat, I also am attempting to guess why Matt set the line where he did on each of these. Some of them I feel pretty decent about. Others I don't feel particularly good about.
Okay, fair enough. All right, Bill, we'll start things off with the first line in the Penn State over-under 2026 show. Bill, over-under 26 and a half passing touchdowns for Rocco Becht.
So the reason I think you set this number at 26 and a half is because Rocco's career high is 25, and I think you were just going to tick above that. I think it's going to be an under. And my thought process here is that in Matt Campbell's entire tenure at Iowa State, he had one quarterback eclipse this number, and it was Brock Purdy. In 2019, we had 27 passing touchdowns. Rocco's career high was 25 passing touchdowns in 2024, which is a year where he had 2 NFL wide receivers. I think he has an NFL tight end, at least possibly 2 NFL tight ends, and then potentially some guys who could be later round picks in the NFL. So I don't quite think he has guys like Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel out on the outside. Plus, I just think that they're going to be built around their running game. I think they're going to really try to push teams around on the ground. I don't think they're going to be playing from behind a ton. I think they're going to really try and play smash mouth football and then take some shots down the field. We'll see more with games against like Michigan and USC if they put the ball in the air some more. So in general, I think this is going to be, I think this one will be an under.
All fair points. Bill, you are correct in the reasoning behind why I got there. This would tie Purdy's career high. So that's what I went off of here, just because I figured with a little bit of a change in scenery, a little bit of a better offensive line, I decided to go with the Purdy number for his senior season as opposed to Beck's sophomore season when he had 25. So good call out there. Nick, we will take it over to you.
Yep, I was assuming the same as Bill as far as how you came up with this number. But yeah, the closest Rocco's come to this 25 touchdown passes in 2024 when he threw the ball 456 times. No Penn State quarterback has topped 26 passing touchdowns since Trace did in 2017. No Penn State quarterback has thrown the ball as many times as Rocco did in 2024 as since Christian Hackenberg in 2014 when he threw the ball 484 times. I think this is a pretty easy under. One, just because I don't see Rocco topping this number anyway, but I agree that I think this offense is going to run through the ground, especially early on. Like I maybe the passing game picks up as the season goes on, but especially as they get their legs under them, I think they're gonna really force things on the ground, and I don't see 27 happening. I think he ends the year with somewhere between 18 and 21.
Yeah, and to kind of go off of something that Nick mentioned there, that year that Brock Purdy hit 27 passing touchdowns, he put the ball in the air 475 times. I just can't imagine them doing that. And then one thing I do think is really important here, or could be potentially really important here, is I'm really interested in how they fold Alex Mansky in to the offense with, an eye on next season, with an eye on we want to make sure that Rocco is healthy, with an eye on we want Mansky to get back out there after, this is the thing that started going around on the beat, and the program posted earlier this week after he needed to have open heart surgery earlier this offseason. Just want to get him as many live reps as possible with an eye on 2027. All that said, like I think when you put all those things together, it's kind of hard to see a path to Rocco potentially getting to 27 touchdowns.
Bill, I think that's a great call out with the Mansky point. But in your explanation, you said basically the reasoning I have for me also taking the under on this, and that's I don't think they're going to be playing from behind very often. Like, especially the non conference, there's no shot they should be. And then I think this is a team that is built to keep things close. And I can't imagine when they go to the big house, when they go to Washington, when Minnesota comes to town, that they're going to want to sling the ball around. That feels like the kind of game you want to shorten as much as possible. Keep it on the ground, rely on your running backs. I'm probably going to split the difference here between Nick, your 18 to 21 number, and this 27 mark I've set this at. I'm going to put it probably like 24, 23 passing touchdowns for Rocco. That feels about right for his senior season. But I do think he's going to be incredibly efficient with his opportunities to throw the football. And I'm very excited to see how they're able to come out of the gate and how they're going to play Rocco to start, especially coming off some injuries. I mean, if he comes out there and they come out swinging, he throws 5 touchdowns against Marshall, this might be destined to hit the over, but we will see what comes out of this here. All right, fellas. Bill, we'll go to you for number 2, and we'll go in order that I sent these over. Over under 1.5 wide receivers in the top 3 pass catchers in terms of receptions.
I think this will be over. I think you set this number because last year at Iowa State, it was barely 2 pass catchers who were able to be in the top 3. The top 3 for Iowa State last year was Ben Bramer at 37, Chase Sowell at 32, Brett Eskilson at 30, and then Gabe Burkle was very close with 26. And then the next guy after that was Carson Hansen with 19.
So do all 5 of those guys play for now, Bill?
They all play for Penn State. But having said that, even last year at Iowa State, that was 2 receivers who were over, who were part of the top 3 pass catchers, Eskilson and Sowell with Bramer. And I think those 2 plus Kobe Howard being parts of the infrastructure here, plus Ben Bramer, Andrew Rapplier, Gabe Burkle, all eating into one another's reception numbers. I have a hunch about what you're about to say, Matt. I think that the running backs are also going to eat into each other's reception numbers because Carson Hansen and Quentin Martin and James Peoples are all pretty good at catching the football. I think basically all 5 of those guys, other than Ben Bramer, who I think might be the number 1 option in this offense, all basically cannibalize one another, and it ends up looking a lot like Iowa State did last year, where Bramer, Eskilson, and Sowell are the top 3 receivers.
Bill, you are correct in why I set this number as such. Good call out there once again. Nick, will go over to you.
Once again, this was also my assumption for why you chose this number, and I'm also going over pretty easily. I don't need to repeat everything Bill just said, but yeah, like I do think the tight ends are going to be heavily involved in this, and I'm sure that's why you set this number here, but I don't think the tight ends are going to be involved in a way that leads to multiple of them being in the top 3. I think it just manifests itself as, maybe Brahmer. I think Brahmer will be in that top 3, but maybe in 3rd on that, just because his targets will get eaten into by Rapplier and Burkle and whoever else emerges in that tight end room. I don't think any of the running backs will be close there. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's going to be the same top 3 that it was last year at Iowa State. Sowell, and I heard a video. I think it sounded like he pronounced his name Eskilson rather than Eskilson. I don't know. I couldn't
I can't get a read on that either. I keep on hearing it being pronounced different ways by different broadcasters.
There's a video the other day of him saying it. Like somebody asked
Eskilson?
him. It sounded like he said Eskilson.
That's how I've been saying it, is that Brett Eskilson.
So, but yeah, I think Sowell, Eskilson, and Brahmer will be the top 3.
I'm going to disagree with both you guys here. And a lot of this comes from the way Matt Campbell, I think it was maybe about a week ago in one of his post-practice availabilities, or it may have been at Media Day, where he basically said he would be disappointed if 12 personnel wasn't their base set, and then if 13 personnel wasn't up there as well. I don't have the exact quote on me, but with also Taylor Mauser being the tight ends coaches also kind of makes me think that, hey, this guy's going to want to get his position room involved a good bit here. I think that this receiver room for Penn State is still not something I can bank on because it's a Penn State receiver room. I'm not comfortable banking on that yet. But what I am comfortable banking on is Ben Bramer, is Gabe Burkle, and I know Rappleyea really hasn't shown it consistently, but the way he ended the year, I think that's a very, very talented football player and a guy who's going to be a big part of the offense. I think running backs, like you mentioned, Bill, are going to be a fairly large part of this receiving game as well, especially with a guy like James Peoples. Could eat into this a little bit here. Go ahead, Bill.
So before the podcast, I said to Nick that I think you are going to say that a running back could be part of the top 3 here.
I don't have it as part of the top 3.
Do you think it could be, though?
No, I don't. I think it's way more likely. I think I could probably rattle off, Bill, 3 receivers, I would say, are more likely before the first running back I pick there.
Okay, because I was going to say that a running back has been at the top 3, a top 3 pass catcher one time under Matt Campbell. It was 2020, and the running back was Breece Hall. And with all due respect to Penn State's running backs this year, none of them are Breece Hall.
No, you're not wrong. But again, I just feel really good about this tight end room being 12 and 13 personnel, being kind of the base set. And then I don't feel like there's all that much separation between Sowell, Eskildson, Kobe Howard. And then let's go even down the depth chart. Amari and Jackson, Zay Robinson. Do I have the names right there? Correct? Did I not mess up? Did I flip their last names?
I was going to say, are you then saying that you do think there is separation between Ben Bramer, Gabe Burkle, and Andrew Rappleyea?
No, I don't. That's kind of my broader point, is that I kind of feel like they're all going to be on the field interchangeably, if not at the same time, as opposed to the receiver room. I don't think any certain guy or any 2 certain guys especially are going to separate themselves to get that large of a rep share to where they can really get some distance between that and what I view as the second tight end. I think we can all agree, if we're doing top 2, Brahmer's in the top 2 for all 3 of us, right? In terms of receptions?
I would say probably.
Nick, you're muted.
I would say maybe. I'm not comfortable in saying that for sure, though.
I feel really strongly about that. Interesting. Okay.
I don't doubt that they're going to play 12. 12 personnel probably should be their base, but 12 personnel is not just about getting tight ends out to catch passes. 12 personnel is about the run game, but it's also about just causing conflict points for the linebackers and the safeties in order to open things up for the wide receivers. So even if they're going lots of 12 personnel, that doesn't make me more or less confident that the tight ends will necessarily catch more passes.
And I think if they're going to really try to push the football down the field, as good as Bramer is and how big of a target he is, he's not the guy of the trio with him, Kobe, or of the foursome, even with him, Kobe Howard, Brett Eskildson, Rowan Gardner, whatever you want to call him, and Chase Sowell, who are going to beat a defense way down the field. And if one of the priorities is to push the football down the field, Bramer is the 4th best option at that. So I would say probably. I don't think it's written in ink that he is going to be a top 3 receiver on the I would say, again, I would bet on it. I just don't think it's one of those things where it's easy. No, it's not Tyler Warren 2 years ago or anything like that.
No, but and I thought about this a lot, Bill, and you made the comment about hey, they're going to be looking to take shots deep. That was kind of and I think Sowell and Eskildson and Kobe Howard are probably better players than Amari Evans was, but that's always what we heard about Amari Evans. And Amari Evans, his best season had him given maybe 15 catches. That's not a consistent part of your offense, as opposed to, hey, quick little 6-yard outs for the tight end. Hey, whatever to Ben Bramer. I just don't think that's going to be, yes, I think it's going to be a big part of the offense, but I think the 6-yard outs are going to be way more plentiful than those kind of deeper shots.
The pushback I would give to that is that 2 years ago, Jalen Noel had 80 receptions and Jaden Higgins had 87. Last year in a season where Rocco Beck was the walking wounded, Brett Eskildson had 30 and Chase Sowell had 32, and they were right there with Ben Bramer at the very top. So I don't think it's going to be one of those things. I would not be surprised if a big part of it is just they weren't able to push the ball down the field last year, and that is why they did not. But again, having said that, I do think Ben Bramer is, I would say the 3 Iowa State guys we mentioned, Bramer, Sowell, and Eskildson, are going to end up being the top 3 reception guys in Penn State's offense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they're all in the top 4. I think Burkle or Rapp can easily work their way up there as well. So our first disagreement here on over/under number 2. On to number 3. Bill, over/under 33.
Start with Nick on this one. I'm cannibalizing these.
All right, Nick. Nick, over under 33.5 sacks for the Penn State defense.
So first and foremost, I'm assuming that this number comes from the fact that both Penn State and USC had 31 sacks last year. I think that is probably the basis for where this number came from.
There's a couple layers to this.
Okay.
For the reasoning behind it.
So I'm saying under. And just to add in the equation there, Iowa State had 12 sacks last year. I just don't think that this defense is making getting to the quarterback their main priority. I'm not going to say that they wouldn't love for a guy like Kemaju or Granville or Bacon or somebody to step up and become like a 9+ sack guy. But I think the focus here is far more dedicated to stopping the run and, letting everything else fall as it may. Maybe they let Tony Rojas loose and maybe they really let him become like a consistent blitzing presence. But I don't see that in either the DNA of Matt Campbell or really D'Anton Lynn either. I mean, USC kind of did that with Eric Gentry last year a bit, but that's a very different player. He's basically a wide receiver playing linebacker. So, I just think the sacks for this team will come as a function of creating coverage sacks, not a function of being like a Manny Diaz havoc defense. So I think this is an under.
Totally fair. Bill, you want to guess the other layer to this as to why I set this number this way?
So my guess is that you said it because USC had 31 sacks last year and Penn State had 32.
This would also be this would have been an Iowa State. It was the Iowa State record under Matt Campbell was 34. So if it's a record-setting one for a Campbell defense, also is what this comes from.
Okay. So I'm also going to say under, and a lot of it comes to my lack of faith in their pass rush as an impactful group. I don't think it's going to be a bad group, but I think Caleb Bacon's a guy making the move to defensive end. Max Granville's a guy coming off of a knee injury. Yvonne Kemaju is a guy who is going to be in his second year, flashed a bit last year, but isn't really someone who I just have to see it with him before anything else. And then you go through the rest of the defensive end room and it's like, okay, Alexander McPherson got some stuff to like about him, but he's making a big step up from Colorado. Ikenna Ogu, wow, brain just short-circuited. Big physical guy, but is moving from being the edge in a 3-3-5 to an edge in a 4-3 defense. Jackson Ford's a nice young player. He's also a true freshman. LeVar Arrington still got to get a little bit of meat on those bones. So you put this all together, and I don't know where they are consistently creating havoc from, unless they're just sending linebackers and safeties and cornerbacks like crazy. I don't think D'Anton Lynn is going to want to do that. D'Anton Lynn's defense is 31 sacks last year at USC, 21 the year before at USC, 43 in his 1 year at UCLA. He did have,
which featured a first-round pick. Yeah.
Yes, it did have a first-round pick in Laiatu Latu coming off the edge. Put all of that together, I have a really hard time seeing Penn State getting to 34 sacks this year.
I'm torn on this one. This was honestly the hardest one for me. And fundamentally, I agree with both of your points that this isn't a defensive front, especially, or defense as a whole, built to rush the passer consistently. The schedule thing makes it really difficult for me to come to terms with where I want to be on this, though, because I think Marshall's going to be trailing. I think Temple's going to be trailing. I think Buffalo's going to be trailing. I can see a scenario where Wisconsin's trailing, Northwestern, Maryland. I really see a lot of scenarios where Penn State's up multiple scores in the second half and teams have to start throwing the ball around to have any shot at coming back. That is the one hiccup for me here that's keeping me from really going full endorsement on this hitting the over. I'm with you guys. I think I'm going to play this responsibly, though, and I think I'm going to take the under for a lot of the reasons you said. This isn't something that Matt Campbell has ever really put a big emphasis on. He's never really been the guy to chase a bunch of tackles for loss or sacks like this. This number was set at 39.5 for a long time. Other times we've done this because I think Franklin valued that a lot. Manny Diaz certainly valued that a lot. There was a good run there where Penn State was pretty consistently pushing 40 sacks every single season. But with the way I think this defense is built, I just have a really hard time seeing it. I think it's going to be really close, though. I see a scenario where Penn State is able to get home 6 times against Marshall, and that kind of sets the pace for what they're able to do from there on out. And then I'm kind of going to be sweating this under a little bit. but I'll be responsible here, and I'm going to ride with the under on this one as well. So we have agreement once again. Bill, you want to take your shot at this one first, or you want Nick to go on this one?
I don't care.
All right, Bill, we'll go to you. You ready?
Sure.
815 and a half receiving yards for Penn State's leading pass catcher.
I couldn't figure out where you cooked this one up from. I will say, yeah, sure. Why not?
2023, Keandre Lambert-Smith. 2024, Tyler Warren. 2025, Trevor Pena. You add them up, divide by 3. You get 816. This is the average of Penn State's leading pass catcher each of the last 3 years, which features Tyler Warren winning the Mackey Award and then whatever the receiver room was last year. So
I'm going to be honest. Really weird to set
that's
the line
horrible
there,
process.
But it's a
Why is that horrible process?
Because it's a different team.
I think it's
a completely different football team with a completely different receiver room, completely different tight end room, completely different offensive play caller, completely different head coach. I don't know if you've been around these last couple of months, Matt. A lot's happened.
No, it's still listen.
This
it's still
man's out here comparing Keandre Lambert-Smith.
What do you mean, Bill? It's the Penn State receiver room. That's what it comes back to at the end of the day.
This is Iowa State in blue and white.
Disagree. No, not at all. I don't think so. No, I disagree.
Did you not catch that conversation? Did we not catch that conversation we had 5 minutes ago about? I don't buy the Iowa. Ben Bramer, Chase Sobel, and Brett Eskildsen.
So Kobe Howard, Andrew Rappelier, and the running backs aren't any part of this.
One of the running backs is a Penn State guy.
Listen, mathematically, I understand what you're doing here.
No, same here.
But rationally, no.
I can't wait for you guys to each disagree on this too. Then
I am going over on this one because here is the list of times that this did not happen at Iowa State under Matt Campbell. It was last year when Rocco Becht was very, very injured. It was 2020, and the 2020 season shortened because of the pandemic. They still got really close with Xavier Hutchinson, who had 771 yards, and Breece Hall ran for nearly 1,600 yards that year. So they were just handing the ball to Breece Hall a ton. And Brock Purdy also had a pretty good year on the ground. And then his first 2 years at Iowa State, were one guy had 605 yards in his first season. His second season, Alan Lazard had 808 yards, so still very close. And in 2015 in particular, one of his 2 quarterbacks was a guy that he eventually moved to linebacker. So I think when you put all of that together, it's just really hard for me to not see a world where they don't have someone, whether it's Ben Bramer, whether it's Chase Sobel, whether it's Brett Eskildsen, all 3 noted guys who spent the last couple of years at Penn State, eclipsing this mark. So I am going to go with over.
Nick, to you.
I am saying over by like a whisker. Like, I think whoever their leading receiver is, like, I think we're talking like 817. Like, I think we're just talking barely sneaking over.
So by a yard.
And yeah, and I think it's probably going to be like heavily buoyed by one non-conference game. And I think if you remove that non-conference game, it ends up looking like a pretty even split across a lot of guys. Yeah, I like, but like at the same time, like the under would not surprise me. Just because there is no alpha dog, there is no Jalen Noel, there is no Jaden Higgins, right? There is no like true stud number one. If a true stud number one does emerge, and this is contrary to what I was saying before, but it could be Brahmer. It could be Brahmer. But he's also not going to do the Tyler Warren thing. So like I could very easily see Brahmer leading the team in yards with like 700 something and not eclipsing this number. So I do think somebody finds a way to sneak over, as I said, buoyed by a big game against Marshall or somebody else. And I kind of like the pick of Eskildsen being that guy.
I was gonna say, you want to call your shot on that?
Yeah,
the guy to hit
I'll
the
say
over. Bill, you want to call your shot?
817, Brett Eskildsen.
Same. I think the fact that he has chemistry with Rocco Becht, the fact that he is such a deep threat, means that they are going to, and with how good their running game is going to be, I think there's going to be a good amount of shots down the field to Brett Eskildsen. So I would not be stunned at all if it ends up being him. I will mention in his 2 years as a guy who played a good amount at East Carolina, Chase Sowell hit 622 and 678. He did take a step back last year. So he has it in him to put up numbers at receiver. I would not be stunned if he's able to get to this kind of a mark either.
I'm on the under here because the main reason I have behind it is Matt Campbell was a former offensive line coach. And the way he talks about guys like Brock Riker and Malachi Goodman and Anthony Donko is like he has never even begun to let himself dream to have an offensive line like this when he was at Iowa State, because candidly, he probably couldn't land an offensive line like this when he was at Iowa State. And now he can at Penn State. And I think they're just going to run the ball like crazy. And with how much I think they're going to spread the ball out here, I have a hard time imagining a guy is able to hit this number. I think there's several guys hovering in like that 450 to 600 range. That's a massive swing, but I'll leave it there. I really do think that this is going to be a real struggle for this to get to the over. Like Tyler Warren really buoys this up from the process of how I got here. And I don't see a scenario where Eskildsen is that much further ahead of Sowell or that much further ahead of Brahmer. Like, I'll probably plant my flag in that Brett Eskildsen leads this team in receiving yards as well, just like you guys, just given how he's spoken about. But I can't see this hitting. Like, I really just think that Matt Campbell is so excited to run the ball with this football team. And then I just don't think there's going to be enough opportunities for this really to hit. Nick, I do like your call, though, that this could be buoyed pretty easily by a couple deep shots against Marshall.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to kind of look like maybe not so much last year because he really turned into more of a complete receiver, but maybe like a couple years ago, like Alec Pierce on the Colts. Like he gets open for a deep shot or two a game and maybe he only ends up with 4 catches in the game, but because he gets open deep so much, it ends up being like 98, 100 yards. But I think you're right about what you said. Like I don't think there's going to be massive separation between everyone, but yeah, like I said, and like you pointed out, I think it's going to be one game that helps, push someone ahead.
Yeah. Bill, we'll take it back to you on this one. This is actually one I'm really curious about for both of you guys. Bill, over under 89.5 rushing attempts for Rocco Becht.
Well, based off of the last one, my assumption is that like Matt McGloin had 86 carries in 2012. So you're setting it the line there.
I wish.
Yeah. So my guess is that you said it here because last year Rocco had 86 despite being hurt. I do want to ask one clarifying question before we go through any further with this. Are we counting sacks in here?
Yes, because I feel like that's going to be too hard to remove that data. And that's also what I base this on, Bill. Senior Brock Purdy at 85, and then Rocco Becht in 2024, when healthy, had 98.
Okay,
so I don't know if sacks. I'm assuming sacks are included in that number when I pulled it from Iowa State's website as well. So in fairness, they will be included here.
What did you say? 2024, he had 98?
Correct.
So 98 minus the 15 sacks that he had. He ran the ball 83 times in 2024.
It's a lot.
So I'm going to say under, especially if sacks are not going to be counted in here. Like, I just don't think.
No, sacks are going to be counted in here.
Especially if sacks aren't counted in here. But even if they are, I'm going to say under because, like, I just don't think they're going to need to run Rocco a ton. I think they know that they need to keep Rocco healthy. I also think that their running back room basically means that they aren't going to need to do this. Like, I think a lot of the times we're going to see Rocco run are going to be very similar to that touchdown that Drew Aller scored in his first preseason game, where it's just like, we've gotten down to the goal line. We know you're going to be keyed in on Carson Hansen. Okay, I'm just going to pull it and run the football. I don't think there's going to be a ton of like designed runs. I mean, there will be some. I don't think there are going to be a ton of designed runs for Rocco. So I'm going to go under. I will say I do think it's a really good sign for what they think Alex Mansky is, if they are willing to run Rocco a ton, because if they are willing to say like, okay, Rocco, you could go out there and just get absolutely wrecked by some Big Ten defensive lineman because we know we have Alex behind you. I think that, that bodes very well for him, and it brings an element to the offense that I think they would like to. I believe Mauser has said he would like to run Rocco a lot, but he knows that might not be the best idea. So I will go under.
Nick, to you.
I'm going the over here. I think buoyed by early in the season, and then buoyed by any games against defenses that end up, being better than we think they're going to be, and end up being able to get after the passer more. I think the main factor for me here is that for as comfortable as Becht is with Mauser and with so many pieces of the offense, there's still a lot new here. Brand new team, brand new stadium, brand new conference, almost an entirely new offensive line for him. Only one guy from Iowa State will be on that line. Just a lot of new. And I think early on, for someone who is effective with his legs, I think it's just going to be really easy for him to fall back on being able to take a couple yards on the ground and slide down. I think this will be to the coaching staff's chagrin, to be clear. I don't think they want him to run this much, but I think early on, especially as the offensive line, gets their feet under them as well. Like, new offensive line it's going to take a second for them to gel, even against lesser opponents early on. So I think he's going to barely sneak over this because of just the newness of everything, and just the simplicity of being able to grab a couple yards if someone gets into the backfield, stuff like that. And I think he is like Trace McSorley in a lot of ways. Like, he's going to be able to shimmy through some tackle. He's going to be able to like get through some spaces and avoid hits and grab a couple yards, stuff like that. So
he's also going to hold the ball like Trace kind of did, thinking he can make something happen, which might lead to a sack or two, like what happened with McSorley a couple of times.
Yeah. I do think this is an over, just barely. This was the one I had to think about most, honestly.
So just a clarifying question. You don't think that when you say picking up yards on the ground early, you don't think it's going to be calling designed runs for Rocco Becht against Marshall Temple and Buffalo so much as it's going to be Rocco going like, 5 yards, why not?
Correct. I think early on it's going to be scrambles. I think later in the year, again, in the bigger games like Michigan and Washington, then I could start seeing them pull out more design quarterback run stuff, especially if they hadn't done it earlier, just as like a new little wrinkle. So I think the form of the running changes throughout the year. I do think he barely sneaks over.
I was going to say, if they're running Rocco Becht 8 to 10 times against Marshall, Temple, and Buffalo, when I get to the Buffalo game, I am attending the Buffalo game. When I get to that game, I am going to walk up to the box and scream at Taylor Mauser, because that is just, like, come on, brother, we can't be doing that.
Is Mauser a box coach, or is he on the field?
He's going to be in the box. He's basically made fun of himself while he has explained it, but he's also said, like, being able to have the iPad and being able to have my space and being able to kind of be a mad scientist up there is something that he likes. So
Danton's on the field, right?
Yeah. They haven't announced that yet. Yeah. That was actually came up in his press conference today. They haven't said if he's going to be there or not.
Yeah, the one thing that I think they've said is that Mauser has specifically said, like, I like having the view from up in the booth, which means on the Andy Kotelnicki to Mike Yurcich spectrum, his actions are closer to Andy Kotelnicki. And by that spectrum, I mean Andy Kotelnicki was in the booth and Mike Yurcich was not.
I'm on the over here for a couple of reasons. Bill, you called out Alex Mansky. The staff seems to talk about Alex Mansky like he could play tomorrow and like really be productive for them. And I think that's a luxury that is very nice to have. And I think that with Rocco Becht being a senior and with Taylor Mauser, I forget where he said it, but he said he kind of used Rocco as a tight end in some senses with how he likes to run and, stick his nose in there. I think it's Becht's final season. I think they trust the backup, and I think Rocco likes to run. And Nick, I think it's a good call out that maybe in the early slate, it might just be, oh, hey, sweet, here's 6 yards. I'm just going to take it quick and run out of bounds or slide or whatever. But I think this hits the over. I think it's probably closer to that 98 number that he had back in 2024. I just think it's going to be a fairly large part of the offense because I think Taylor Mauser likes letting Rocco run. I think Rocco likes to run. And I think it's probably going to be a decent idea for them to run a little bit more read option than normal, especially if they're trying to play ball control. If they're, in a tight one against Minnesota or Northwestern or Michigan, I just think it makes more sense to keep the ball on the ground and Rocco can make things happen. So I'm going to be on the over here. All right, fellas, 3 more to go. Nick, we'll start with you this time.
Okay.
Nick, over under 7.5 sacks for Penn State's leading sack getter.
I don't know where this number came from exactly, but I'm on the under here. Basically for the same reasons I talked about before. I just don't think this defense is going to be built around creating havoc. If somebody does pass this number, I kind of feel like it would be Tony Rojas because it would
Ooh.
be a sign that they are going to bring consistent pressure from that level. Um, I think they will be right around 30 sacks as a team. I just think they're going to be pretty spread out. I don't expect the defensive tackles to get involved much here unless it's, some sort of a coverage sack or one of the defensive ends just gets around the edge quick enough that forces him up into the pocket. But I think it's going to be pretty spread out. I could see like multiple guys being at 5. But I think it's an under. And if it does go over, I kind of like it to be Tony Rojas.
Fair. I like that. I like that pick. Bill, we'll go to you.
I am doing some very quick mental math, which is dangerous as I am a journalism major. I don't know where you got this one from. The top guy at USC last year at 5.5. The top guy at UCLA, who wasn't an aforementioned NFL draft pick, had 8. Did you do the same thing you did with the receivers, where it was the top 3 guys on each of Danton Lynn's last 3 defenses and then
No.
Okay.
No, this would be the record for a Lynn USC defense. I took UCLA out because Latu really messed up the numbers, and I think it's fair to say Penn State probably does not have a first-round pick, at least from this season on this roster. And also, this has not hit from a Matt Campbell defense in 5 years, and it was a first-round pick in Will McDonald. So there were 2 layers to why I set this here.
Wasn't there another guy at UCLA that year who had 8 or something?
Yeah, there was. That's why I took it was a little bit of recency bias kind of thing, but I did it from his USC numbers.
Okay. And are you considering what Abdul Carter did 2 years ago in this?
I mean, I can if you want me to.
I don't want you to. I think that's goofy. I'm going with the under here, and a lot of it just comes down to I don't think they have that one guy who's going to be able to get to defense. I could see a world like Nick said where it's Tony Rojas, where, probably not Marcus Neal, but maybe Marcus Neal, Zion Tracy gets a decent number of sacks. And I do think as the year goes on, you go back to those 3 guys that I mentioned when we did the team sack number. Caleb Bacon is a really good football player. He is also someone who is making, to whatever extent he is going to be off the edge as opposed to playing linebacker. He's someone who had 3 sacks last year from the linebacker position. You look at Avon Kemaju, really, really good football player. Just not someone who I trust right away to
not
be
like a Chaz Coleman level pass rusher.
Yeah, to make that transition. Max Granville coming back off of an injury. Eziogu is a guy who played one defensive end role in one defense, now playing a different defensive end role in another defense. Those are the 4 guys off the edge most likely to do it, and all of them have to get up to speed to one extent or another. I'm just not certain they will be able to, I don't think it's going to be one of those things where after the first 3 games where they have an opportunity to maybe pad their stats a little more, we're suddenly like, oh, Caleb Bacon has 4 sacks, or, oh, Max Granville's at 5.5 sacks. That's crazy. As a result, I'm going to go under. I wouldn't be surprised if they get close by the end of the year as guys start to round into form, but I just don't think they're going to be able to get there.
I'm going to call a shot here, and this is pure August optimism, baby. I'm going to say this gets to the over, and I'm going to say Max Granville is the one to get it. And the reason I'm picking that is, Bill, you rattled off all of those edge rushers that Penn State has. There is kind of a little part of me that it's like, well, if you have 6 guys you feel good about, that kind of means you have no one you feel great about. So I have a hard time imagining any set number of, or any specific duo of defensive ends is going to dominate the rep share. But I think Granville is the one that I've seen perform, even if it's just a small sample size, at this level as an efficient pass rusher, because he was pretty good in that Boise State game. And I get the Boise offensive line 2 years ago is very different from what he's going to see this year. But I think Granville is a guy who's hungry. I think he's a guy who technically is probably the most sound of this group, or the most comfortable consistently rushing the passer from his current position. So I'm going to call a shot here. I'm going to say he barely gets it with 8 to lead the Penn State defense. Nick, are you sticking with Tony as your leader for sacks this season for Penn State? And I'll call it with Granville.
If someone goes above this number, I'll stick with Tony.
Okay.
If this over does not hit, then I'm gonna say Caleb Bacon.
Okay. Oh, I like that. Bill, we'll go to you. Do you have a pick here for sack leader?
I'll say Eziogu. I will ask, how many sacks does Max Granville have in his collegiate career?
I'm going to say 0.
He has 0. How
Yeah.
many tackles does Max Granville have in his collegiate career?
Maybe 3.
1.
Mm.
I love Max Granville. I think that is a gigantic leap for him to take from 1 tackle and 0 sacks as a child who made the jump to college football in August of his entire thing was he enrolled in August and they were just like, oh, this guy's pretty good, to tearing up his knee and not being able to play for an entire season, to there's a new defensive coordinator here and you're coming back. Like, I think that's a lot to ask from him. I really hope he is able to get to that point. I just don't trust it.
Can I flip that, Bill, with
Sure.
a follow-up question to that? How close do you think Kobe Howard is going to be to Eskildsen and Sowell?
Not particularly.
You don't think it's going to be close? Okay, interesting.
The thing with here's the thing.
Because Kobe has what, 6 catches in his whole career?
I fundamentally think that Kobe Howard is going to. I don't know if he is necessarily going to be a guy who is asked to do what those two are do, because those two are going to be asked to be outside guys. He's going to be asked to be a slot guy, so he's kind of fundamentally going to have a different job than those two, and might be able, like, if Kobe's a guy who gets 35 catches and averages 10 yards a reception, I wouldn't be too terribly stunned about that. Or if they try and get him the ball, the way Andy Kotelnicki in his horrific terrorism football tried to get the football to Trevor Pena, if they try to do stuff like that with Kobe. But I think in terms of like yards per reception and stuff like that, they are going to be throwing down the field more to Brett Eskildsen and Chase Sowell. So I do think it's a little, I understand what you're saying, but I do think it's a bit different.
Okay, that's fair. But I think it's projection is projection no matter what we're talking about here. And I think comparing Granville probably is the defensive line version of Kobe Howard, in that he's a guy Penn State fans have heard about for a long time. And I think we all really just want to see it on the field. All right, Nick, we'll go back to you since Bill just wrapped us up there. Over under 85.5 carries for Penn State's RB2.
Over. I know that everything we have continually heard to this point is about how, we consider all 3 guys starters, all 3 guys are capable. Or at worst, Hanson's the 1 and Martin and Peoples are the 2A and 2B. I think over the course of the year, we're going to see at least a true number 1 and number 2, or a 1A and 1B emerge. And I think it's most likely going to be Hanson and Peoples. Martin is clearly going to have a role on this offense. But I just think that both he and Howard are going to end up doing so many different things that he's just not as involved in the carry split. I think he'll have games where he probably gets more carries than not, but I think they're just going to find more value in using him as more of a chess piece, getting him all over the formation. I think Hanson and Peoples will be the more traditional the backs at that point. And then from there, it's an easy call. The top 2 Iowa State backs last year had 188 and 140 carries. The top 2 Penn State backs last year, 210 and 123. Before that, the top 2 Penn State backs, 220 and 172. I know that not to say that what Penn State did in the past has any bearing on what I think they're doing this year, because there's no reason that it should. There's no carryover in that regard. It's more just the point that, like, when you have 2 running backs, this number is easily hitting the over. And I think that over the course of the season, 2 of them are going to emerge. Like I said, I think Martin is just going to be used in more ways. And I think they'll want some consistency in the backfield. So I think Hansen and Peoples will both easily eclipse this number.
Bill, do you have a guess on how I got this? Because actually, Nick has a pretty good transition for me. That's just to drop it in quick. But if you have a guess, I want you.
I do not. Go ahead.
So this number, basically, this almost always hits for Iowa State. The only exceptions are the Breece Hall and David Montgomery years, and that was kind of where I wanted to drive this. So, Bill, go ahead.
So, is the implication here that you think Carson Hansen is going to be a Breece Hall or David Montgomery level running back?
Well, I haven't given my answer yet on this front, but that's
for setting this line. Okay, brother. I am absolutely going over on this one. Last year, Iowa State, their top two running backs, 188, 140 carries, like Nick mentioned. The year before that, their top three running backs, 151, 124, and 93 carries. And that was with Rocco Becht carrying the ball 98 times. Year before that, their top three running backs, 102, 87, and 84. The year before that, it was 99, 87, and then they actually had a guy at 60 and a guy at 47, and that was the year where they put the ball in the air 457 times. You then go back to the last time they just came nowhere close to this. It was 2021 when Breece Hall, like you mentioned, ran the ball 253 times. I very much do not think we are getting anything like that. I think Penn State does not have a guy that they are going to give the ball to 250 times or anything even close to that with respect to Carson Hansen, who Carson Hansen got 188 carries last season and 151 the year before. He still got a lot of carries last year, and they still smashed this each of the last 2 years. Unless you think they are fibbing and they really think that there is a big gap between Carson Hansen and the next two guys, like I cannot fathom that this one does not hit.
This is a practicality thing for me here because the new clock rules in college football shorten games. Not by a lot, but over the course of a season, you're missing out on a good chunk of plays. And that's why, for that reason, I'm going to go under. I took the Rocco Becht over on those rushing attempts. I think between Carson Hansen, I think is very clearly going to be the lead dog in this pack. But I don't think, Bill, I think probably, what was it, Bill? What do you have last year? 184? Was that what it was? Somewhere in that range.
188.
188. Thank you. I think that's probably fair for where it's going to be, but I still think the Rocco is going to come close to 100 carries. I think Peoples and oh my God, Quentin Martin, excuse me, sorry about that, are going to be very much so involved. And I think the rigors of a Big Ten season is probably going to mean they're going to rotate those two guys a lot more than we traditionally have seen from Penn State with RB2 and RB3. So I think this is very, very close, but I'm going to give it under here. I don't see a scenario where all of these guys can be involved running the football. Like, I think it's becoming clear that they want it to be and this number to hit. So I think it's close, but I'm going to take the under.
Good, Nick.
I think there's a better chance of 3 of them being over this number.
I agree with that.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. So here's the thing. Here's the thing, Matt.
But you took the receiving yards over, which is interesting. Those feel like those are against.
Well, carries and receiving yards are like, one is a pure volume thing in terms of like how many times you're getting.
There's only so many plays. And I still don't buy Penn State as a deep ball team. The other one you don't buy them as a deep ball team, even though they say they're a deep ball team. I haven't seen. I got to see it. Maybe I have scars from Penn State. It's a Penn State receiving core. Okay. It's a mental hurdle I'm not ready.
It's Iowa State's receiving core. We went over this.
Who do they play for, Bill?
They played for Iowa State last year.
Who do they play for this year?
Iowa State's quarterback and offensive coordinator.
What was Trevor Pena at Syracuse last year when he transported over? Like that, I'm not counting that. I'm not counting it.
We're not talking about German mercenaries in the Revolutionary War, my guy.
So here's why I think this will not. Why I think this will go over. Matt, what did you say for Rocco Becht rushing attempts? You said right around 100, or you said over 89.5?
Yeah, I have the over on that.
Over on 89.5. He had 86 last season. When you factor in sacks last season, he was at 65 rushing attempts, but in all 86. Carson Hansen had 88 carries last year. The next two running backs were Abu Sama at 140 and Dylan Lee at 25. Okay. If you are just averaging out those two, if you are taking 140 plus 25, put them together, divide by 2, you are then getting at 82.5 carries per guy, which would be just below this. And I believe James Peoples and Quentin Martin are both going to be have bigger roles in this offense than what I think Dylan Lee would have had last year. So I'm with Nick. I feel more comfortable saying 3 guys would hit this than 1 guy would hit this.
Okay, interesting. All right, this is maybe one that's I'm going to be watching extra close just to see how they rotate all this stuff through. I think if we want to talk about how Iowa State, Matt Campbell, Taylor Mauser changed their approach to be in a new league, a perceived more physical league, I think this is a really good lens to kind of view that through. I'm really curious about this. All right, fellas, last one. Bill, we'll start with you. In honor of Matt Campbell being an offensive line coach, we will end with an offensive line question. Bill, over under 21.5 sacks allowed by the Penn State offensive line this year.
My guess is you set this because Rocco got sacked 21 times last year, and my guess is you were going to go under off of Malachi Goodman, Brock Riker, Cooper Cousins, and Anthony Donko being better than what Iowa State had in their offensive line last year.
50-50 there. Reasoning is
50-50.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am going to go over, and I think it's less a knock on the offensive line. And I don't even really mean it as a knock on Rocco either, but it's more that I think they're just going to want to try and push the ball down the field, which is going to lead to Rocco dropping back, Rocco sitting back there, looking around, trying to extend plays. And they're going to get sacks off of that. Like, I don't necessarily think this is going to be an indictment on the offensive line. I don't necessarily think this is going to be an indictment on Rocco Becht. I don't think it's going to necessarily mean the offense is like just putting guys in positions to fail. I just think this is going to be, if we are looking down the field to throw the football, the quarterback is going to get hit. So I'm going to take the over.
Nick, we'll go to you.
I think it's an under with an asterisk, just because the deeper the season goes, obviously, I think the chance for the over to hit becomes a lot higher. 1, because just the number of games, but 2, the opponents will get better. But like Bill said, Iowa State allowed 21 last year. Penn State allowed 19 last year. I think this is going to be a better offensive line for Penn State than what they had last year. That combined with the fact, like I said before, I think Becht is slippery. I think he is going to hold the ball to try to make plays down the field, but he's also going to be able to get out of sacks, again, akin to the way McSorley was in a lot of ways. But I also think the fact that he is believe he's the most experienced returning quarterback in college football this year, if I remember correctly.
The winningest, at least. Yeah.
Okay. But that's a huge factor too. Like, I think he'll be able to find his checkdowns, whether to his tight ends or his running backs, or just pick up yards on the ground a little bit more easily than Drew Aller or even Ethan Grunkmeyer were able to do last year. And I would hope that, being a little bit older and more experienced, he'll also have a better sense of when to throw the ball away than those guys do. So I think that those things combined will all manifest into this being an under. I really do like the way this offensive line looks, both in the near term and both in the short and the long term. So it's that and just Becht's experience that have me leaning under here.
Totally fair. I'm on the over here, Bill. I'm with you. And I don't think it's going to be like, he's not going to get sacked for like 8-yard losses a lot. Like, I would not be surprised if, like you said, Bill, he's slippery. He gets out of trouble a little bit and he still goes down like for a 2-yard loss instead of an 8-yard loss. Like, I think we're going to see a good amount of stuff like that pop up. Becht, it's not a knock. McSorley like doing it. Becht likes to play hero ball a little bit, and I think that might come back to bite them from time to time. I don't think it's an indictment at all on the offensive line, but also it's an offensive line that features a center who we think really highly of, but still was in the Sun Belt last year, and an offensive tackle at left tackle who is extremely good, has never been on the field in a collegiate football game. I think it might take some time to get the kinks out. I think going to play at Michigan against a Kyle Whittingham defense can be problematic. I think this is really close. Nick, like you, I think deeper in the season as it goes, I think there's more opportunities for this to kind of creep up a little bit. And I think it eventually creeps up into the over on this front. So a disagreement to close things out. And fellas, we're 59 minutes and 28 seconds into this podcast, and I have a secret bonus one for you that I will go first on.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Over under 9.5 wins for Penn State this fall. I'm on the under. I think really highly of Matt Campbell. I like this team a lot. I think the schedule was fantastic. I was super bought in last year. Part of this might be a little bit of me protecting my little heart a little bit here, but I'm going to go under here. A lot of trap games here that scare me. Matt Campbell is great as an underdog, kind of fine as a favorite. I think there's some things that bite this team down the line. I'm going to say Penn State goes 9-3 this fall. Bill, we'll start with you.
No, I'll let Nick go here because I'm very interested in what he has to say.
First of all, don't make over-under picks with your heart. Don't be hurt. Last year does not matter here. Come on now. I am going to say over. I don't think this team is like, I think they could very easily make the playoff. I don't think that they are I don't think they're a real threat to like win a national title this year or even make a Final Four necessarily. But this is a good football team with a lot of experience and good players. And I think we've seen in recent years that experience has been the trump card for the last few years in college football. It's been the thing that's allowed teams to take steps forward. We've talked about the schedule enough. The schedule is not good. Like I'm not scared. It's a cross country trip, but I'm not scared of Washington. I think they win that game. Michigan, we'll see. I still have a lot of questions about what Michigan is going to look like with Kyle Whittingham.
Real quick, Nick, you from the stands of that Washington game might will them to victory.
That's right. USC at home. I think they can beat USC at home. Like like it's just there's nothing on the schedule that's yeah, sure, there's plenty of trap games on here, like any schedule, but there's just nothing that jumps out to me as like, oh my God, like that's an auto L. Like there's no Ohio State game. There's no, still getting used to saying it. There's no Indiana game. There's like I see no logical reason right this moment to take that under. So I'm going to take the over.
All right. All very fair. Bill, take us home.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna take the over here. I think there is some element of fake it till you make it with this. When you look back at what Indiana did 2 years ago, they basically ported in a bunch of guys who knew exactly what the head coach wanted and had a roster full of 21 and 22 and 23-year-olds. And I think Matt Campbell has managed to successfully do that here. I think this is going to be, I think this could end up being health, very much depending on health. Like if we get, 5 games into the season and Tony Rojas is hurt again and, insert catastrophic injury here happens, then yeah, this is totally different. But I think that the way the schedule sets up is really favorable for them. They have that game at Northwestern, the home game against Minnesota are games where I'm like, they could be tripped up there. Obviously, USC, Michigan, and Washington are kind of the 3 major games we all have circled. And I think as long as they are able to stay healthy, I think they can go 3-2 over those 5 games. And if they go 3-2 over those 5 games, I think they win every other game and they're a 10-win team. I think having the amount of continuity that they have despite coming over from a new place, I think the way they were able to supplement the Iowa State guys with really high-level guys from Penn State is really, really good and really, really important. And I don't think they're going to go into any – Matt, the way that I've looked at this for however long is I look through the entire schedule and I go, okay, how does this Penn State team match up talent-wise, whatever else-wise, against all of their opponents? In years past, I've always picked Penn State to lose to Ohio State and Michigan, not because of what Penn State is, but because of what Ohio State and Michigan were. I don't necessarily think there are any games like that on the schedule. I think they will have a chance in every single game that they play. Yep. I think there will be those 5 games are going to be the ones that kind of determine it. You just lose 2 of those, and I think we're talking about a 10-win football team. Does that mean I think Penn State is one of the 12 or so best teams in the country? Probably not, but that doesn't matter. All that matters is getting to the playoffs. So I will go over.
All right, fellas, that's all I got. That is
Okay.
the 2026 Penn State over-under draft. And that is a wrap, fellas, on the 2026 Penn State offseason podcast. For those listening at home, if you want to play along, I encourage you to jump to our YouTube page and give us your picks in the comments. Again, one last time just to put it all in one place. Over-under 26.5 passing touchdowns for Rocco Becht. Over under 1.5 wide receivers in the top 3 pass catchers in terms of receptions. Over under 33.5 sacks for the Penn State defense. Over under 815.5 receiving yards for Penn State's leading pass catcher. Over under 89.5 rushing attempts for Rocco Becht. Over under 7.5 sacks for Penn State's leading sack getter. Over under 85.5 carries for running back 2. Over under 21.5 sacks allowed by the Penn State offensive line, and over under 9.5 wins for Matt Campbell's Nittany Lions. Bill, Nick, anything else before we send the folks off into their week?
I got nothing. Nick?
I take your silence as nothing.
Nick, anything?
Took me a while to find the mute. No, this was fun. Glad to be back.
It's week 0 as we release this. You can watch Bo Pribula face off against NC State this upcoming Saturday. And on that NC State defense, you can find former Penn State safety King Mack, former Alabama safety King Mack, and former Penn State safety again King Mack, and also former Penn State linebacker Dakari Nelson. Bill, I will pass it off to you for the outro if you would like to take us home.
Yeah, why not? I've done it enough times. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this session of Roar Lions. Roar, as always, make sure you go and subscribe whatever your podcasting platform of choice may be. And if it's one of them fancy platforms that let you leave a 5-star review, we'd really appreciate it if you could go and do that. Head on over to YouTube, which is now counting views differently. So it's a big old scam, and we want you to help us get in on this scam. So go over to YouTube, check out the podcast over there, hop into the comments, subscribe, like the video, do whatever you got to do over on YouTube. Make sure you're giving us a follow on both Twitter and on Blue Sky. One last time, thank you very much for listening to this edition of the podcast. For Nick Pollock and Matt Filipovitz, I'm Bill DeFilippo. Take care, everyone.
Guys, over under James Franklin assistants he beats this fall.
What is he? He faces how many?
I think it's
Ronnie.
Yep, he's got Ronnie. He's got Manny, and we'll throw Bo in there, even though he's not an assistant. But what does he got going on there?
You'll throw Bo Pribula in there, even though he's not an assistant.
Yeah, well, it's the end of the podcast. No one's listening to this point anyway.
Fascinating inclusion.
Yeah,
Ronnie. Oh wait, he faces Ronnie, Loxley, O'Brien, Narduzzi, back to back, and then at the end of the year, he doesn't play Manny this year. So
no, not Manny. All right.
Yeah. So I will take the over because the only one he plays is Ricky Ronnie.
Nick.
Ronnie wins.
He loses to Bo. Go State.